Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine Podcast, part of the Foul Territory Network. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about the impact of Kyle Teel's injury on the Chicago White Sox, as Kyle Teel suffered a left high ankle sprain in the series against the Texas Rangers. He is now going to be out for the next 6 to 12 weeks. So, what is the impact on the White Sox? Does this force them to make a decision in finding another catcher before the trade deadline? And what is the long-term outlook for Kyle Teel as the White Sox primary catcher? Join us first in the Sox Machine podcast. You can see him on Foul Territory daily at youtube.com/foul territory from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Central Time. Former Major League catcher, it's Erik Kratz. And Erik, thank you so much for joining the Sox Machine podcast.
Yeah, Josh, thanks for having me on. I'm excited that you guys are part of the Foul Territory Network, and I'm excited that AJ doesn't have to be the only one to talk about his beloved White Sox.
Especially a White Sox catcher when it comes
Yeah.
to the impact of Kyle Teel. So let's start there, Erik. Left high ankle sprain for Kyle Teel. He's now going to miss the next 6 to 12 weeks. What's the impact on the White Sox with this injury?
I mean, right out of the gate, everybody knows Kyle Teel has not been healthy. He's not been on the field. So they've been winning without him. When I watch this White Sox team, and I'll admit I don't watch it as much as fans watch it. They watch your show and everything, but I see this guy, and I saw him ever since he got traded. He got traded from the Red Sox. I saw him early in his career when I worked for the Red Sox for a little bit. And just talking about him to people or other people talking about him, his numbers don't necessarily, as you see him on the board here, they don't necessarily pop off the page. But his intensity, his focus on baseball is something that's unmatched. And when you talk about the catching position, you say, okay, you need him to be offensively driven. Yes. You need to be defensively driven and all those things. He needs to be selfless to be there for the pitchers. And I think he added something to this team that I think they were missing when he was out, when they were trying to do the Edgar Caro dance, when they were trying to do the Drew Romo great story. Like all those things, I get it. I watch them play. I just think he brings something more than what offensively you're going to see, and even sometimes defensively you're going to see in the stats, that I think his intensity and his focus are really encapsulating this whole team, and it sucks that he's out. It really does. No, there's no other way around it.
And for this particular season, we were excited because he had an impressive debut. Could he launch to another level like Colson Montgomery has in his second season? And now, Erik, this is 3 separate lower half injuries. The pulled hamstring from the World Baseball Classic, twisted his knee in rehab, and now a high ankle sprain. With these 3 separate lower half injuries, are there any concerns as far as longevity as Kyle Teel being a catcher?
Not in this day and age, no. We're not in the early 90s when it's like, well, probably gonna have to cut his leg off. It's now we have a lot of great rehab abilities. We have an ability to come back from different injuries. Is it more rigorous as a catcher? Yes. Is one of the tools that he has speed going to be hindered a little bit? Yeah, maybe. But I mean, when he pulled his hamstring in the World Baseball Classic, you saw that he was getting after it. Like it wasn't like he was just cruising through things and then he pulled something. Like he plays hard. That might need to be curtailed a little bit to stay healthy, but he's also like 5 years old. He's super young. He's going to learn that kind of stuff. And if anybody says, well, lower half injury when you're a catcher, this is terrible. Like example A, Buster Posey.
Yeah.
Shattered his ankle. I mean, if you see, I got to see the x-rays of his ankle. It was not good. And you go, uh-oh, like a lower half ankle injury, that is going to spell doom and gloom for the rest of his career. And now, we're going to be voting for him for the Hall of Fame soon. So no, I don't think it's going to, unless he's not able to curtail what is causing these injuries.
And with the injury, I don't know if you got a chance to watch as far as the highlight, but As you know, catchers get put into really bad fielding spots, especially a place at home plate and fielding those throws from the outfield. As Braden Montgomery's throw was more up the first baseline and Teal caught it, he's on his knees and he's leaning over to try to tag the runner. Is there better technique in that particular play that Kyle Teel still needs to learn to avoid hurting himself?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm sure that he'll go through it or he has gone through it. You put yourself, you practice techniques, and then when the game happens, you get the freaking job done. Like it's like you practice perfect blocking techniques. When it's time to block, you might look like a rodeo clown, like trying to sling your arm out there to block something that's probably going to hurt. Like it's one of those things that, yes, he put himself in a position. His injury actually is not that dissimilar to what happened to Buster Posey. If you remember that collision a long time ago with Cousins, I forget what his first name was, but it was a play at the plate. The ball, he was in a good spot. The ball bounced, and then he kind of stuck to the ground with his knees in the ground, and that ankle got rolled up under him. When Cousins hit him, then his ankle stayed where it was and rolled up under him. Same with Teel. That ball kind of was in an awkward spot. Instead of shifting and moving his feet, staying on his toes, especially his left foot. Now we're getting really, mechanical about it. But if he stays on his toes, now he's able to step back, or when he goes to make that move, that like from his right side over to his left side to extreme tag, because the runner was trying to avoid a tag. Now it's more of an athletic move where he goes from his feet or even from his toe in like a crouched position, and he's able to go down on that left knee. Instead, he was already down two knees, and when he goes to roll, that foot is basically, both his feet were out like this, and it gets up on it and all that weight. And again, like I don't know how to say it other than the guy plays hard, and he's not going to, he doesn't care. Like I wish I knew exactly how old he is. I think he's 24. He might be 23, but he puts his body at risk to get the play done. He puts his body at risk running down the line to be safe at first or to get to second on a hustle double. Like, to me, his mentality and his mindset are what encapsulate this team, like I said, but it's also what could cause some of these types of injuries. But you learn that. You really do. You learn it, and he's going to go over it, and he probably already knows. I'm not saying the catching coaches haven't gone through that with him. It's just one of those things that in the moment, got to get the job done.
Hey, for the families out there looking for a new path to help your child succeed, take a look at K-12 powered schools. K-12 offers tuition-free, accredited online public education for students in kindergarten through 12th grade, all in a setting that works for your family. And they've been a leader in online education for over 25 years, serving over 3 million families. And Todd, Father, you've raved about the homeschooling experience.
Hey, if you're a busy family, K-12 is where it's at. I've had a couple of my children who've been homeschooled. It's a fantastic opportunity for them not only to get better in school, but timely fashion too, and make some new friends. K-12 has every opportunity to make your child better and smarter as they move forward in their academic career.
See how K-12 powered schools can help unlock your child's full potential. Enroll online today at k12.com/FOUL. That's the letter K, the number 12.com/FOUL, k12.com/FOUL.
Now, before Teel arrived, the White Sox, as you mentioned before, had Edgar Caro, gave him runway. That didn't work. He ended up getting demoted to Charlotte. Drew Romo's still struggling at the plate. The advanced metrics do not like the combination of Drew Romo and Edgar Caro, both offensively and defensively. With the trade deadline coming up and the uncertainty when if Kyle Teel returns this season, Erik, do the White Sox have to acquire another catcher before the deadline?
I say this with all due respect to two guys who are now like backup kinds of guys that I was. You think one of those two guys can step up and play. You look at the numbers and you go, all right, they're never really going to hit. We haven't had a large enough sample size, whether in AAA or in the big leagues, that there's some deficiencies there hitting. So what are you looking for? you're looking for a guy who can control the pitching staff, who really needs it because your pitching staff is not like you're not rolling out Cy Young winners, maybe future Cy Young winners. You know, I'm not saying that they can't, but you're not rolling out guys that are doing it on their own. You need to be able to have guys that can execute game plans and defensively be back there and do the things that acquire value, that give them value. And I look at a guy like, who are they going to trade for? Well, they're not going in for the Hunter Goodmans, the Shea Langoliers, even we talked to somebody on with Fish on First, one of our other shows in the Foul Territory Network, and I said, what about a Liam Hicks? A Liam Hicks would be an upgrade, offensively awesome, but are the White Sox willing to make that big of a move? No. The White Sox are willing to make a move to find somebody that can give them value, I think, defensively, but also gives them a lot of more of a veteran presence behind the dish. And when that happens, fans are going to look at it and go, why do we need a guy that's hitting one this or one that? Like, I get it. I was that guy. Like, teams traded for me and they were like, why on earth did we trade for this guy? He's a career 209 hitter. Like, he stinks. I added value with the mitt. I added value, veteran presence, all that stuff. And that kind of stuff helps your team win. So the name, when you asked me to come up with somebody, and AJ and I were talking about it, Jonah Heim.
Okay.
Where's Jonah Heim at right now? Jonah Heim is not going to cost you very much. I get it. He's not Shea Langoliers. He's not, whatever. You can say, well, we want the best catcher in the game. Well, it's not going to happen, okay? Like, that's pump the brakes. But a Jonah Heim adds that defensive metric. He's won a World Series. He adds that offense. And you know what? He's not a starting guy, but he has started. So can the White Sox go and get that? Because to me, Teal's not back this year. I make this move saying Teal's not back. I'm not a doctor. He could come back at 6 weeks and be 100% fine. Then you know what you got? Then you got Kyle Teel and a World Series winning catcher. Whatever you think of Jonah Heim right now, I know he adds value, and it's going to be more value than what they're getting consistently from a Drew Romo or a Edgar Carroll or the smattering of other Erik Kratz minor league backup catchers that you're going to get.
Now, my last question to you, Erik, as someone that's been traded and been that guy, if the White Sox do trade for like a Jonah Heim or anyone to help on the catching situation, because that extra layer of not being very familiar with White Sox pitchers, what is that transition period like when they join the new team?
I love that you asked that because I love talking about this. It's not that tough. Like, everyone's like, oh, it's going to be so tough. From front offices to fans to even sometimes some other catchers. And I'm like, it's not that tough. I did it. I wish I knew how many times I did it, but I did it way too many times. I got traded over to the Royals. Did I catch a lot? No, I didn't. But I was there, and the process is exactly the same as when I got traded over to the Yankees in 2017, over to the Brewers in 2018, or the Rays in 2019, all playoff teams. All games matter when you're catching in playoff situations. And you know what you do? If you're a catcher, you put the effort in to learn the guys. You learn the guys. You know what? I get traded over to the Rays, and the first day I'm there, I show up in Yankee Stadium, and I got to catch Blake Snell. I watch Blake Snell. I don't know jack about Blake Snell. As far as like catching him in a game, facing him, I do. But I'm like, you know what? Today, I have to have a crash course in catching Blake Snell, and we're going to go from there. You're learning on the fly. It's not that crazy if you put the effort out there. If you go, whatever, I'll just catch whatever. Hey, just throw me what you got. Sorry, those days are gone. Like I don't care who you are. If you're Noah Schultz to Shane Smith to Davis Martin, I don't care where you're at, AAA, big leagues, like they want to be cared about, cared for, known. And if you don't put that effort in as a catcher who just showed up, you're not going to get the most out of them. And this is a playoff team, not even just playoff contending team. The White Sox are a playoff team. And without that catching position, without these pitchers that you have, because you're not going out and getting some dudes, they might get Gausman. I think that would be a tremendous fit if they would get Gausman. But he can do his own thing. But The catching position just means you got to care about the dudes on the mound. And fans, whoever they get, pump the brakes. The dudes will hit. If a backup catcher gets brought in and he gets to play on a consistent basis, they end up hitting. Even crappy hitters like me end up hitting the more you play because it's consistent. The value is behind the dish, and that's why I love, if they were to go get a Jonah Heim type of player.
Well, I appreciate your insight, Erik. Again, you can see Erik daily, Monday through Friday on youtube.com/foul territories. They live stream from 12 to 2 p.m. covering all things Major League Baseball. And with the White Sox being good, that's why we're part of the Foul Territory Network. And they'll be talking more about this crazy race in the American League Central. But Erik, thank you so much for joining the Sox Machine podcast.
Thank you, Josh.
Shop the 2026 All-Star Collection now at the new look foulterritoryshop.com. The drop features every All-Star, including Munetaka Murakami, Miguel Vargas, and Tristan Peters. Keep an eye out for more officially licensed gear throughout the rest of the season and playoffs at foulterritoryshop.com.
Howard, I'm so glad I saved your number. My husband fell at a construction site and is in critical condition. I knew it wasn't safe.
I'm very sorry to hear that. I just want to let you know I'm here to help. Yeah, tell me more about it. Work injuries not only affect the victim, but also everyone around them. Inc. Law is Chicago-based and here to advocate on your behalf. With over 100 attorneys and staff, if you or someone you know has questions about a work injury, call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal. That's Inc. Law.
Now, continuing the conversation on the impact on the Chicago White Sox with Kyle Teel's injury, joining me is Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis. And hello, gents. We just got to hear from Erik Kratz about the White Sox situation and Kyle Teel missing 6 to 12 weeks. Now, that timeline may have changed, James, as Scott Merkin, White Sox beat reporter for MLB.com, tweeted after having a conversation with Kyle Teel that it might be 5 to 8 weeks. We'll see. But you also wrote an excellent column about how the White Sox still view Kyle Teel in the long term. And I guess with 3 injuries in the lower half this year, their view as far as Kyle Teel being their future catcher long term hasn't changed, right?
I haven't talked to them a ton about it. I just think it's in terms of what you've invested into this prospect, what you believe and state repeatedly in kind of different specific ways that are hard to fake about what you believe his ceiling is, doesn't make this sound like something you can really replicate in an easy way. Like you didn't get Kyle Teel for cheap. You can certainly say they did well in the Erik Kratz trade, but you can't say like, oh, this is like something that you easily replicate via. This is not the Milwaukee Brewers finding a number 4 starter level of like, well, we do this on the cheap all the time and it's repeatable, our method. Like both Teel and Caro, like obviously they took advantage of like the Angels in a desperate situation, but like, and they were rental trades, but they were solid assets that they sent to them, at least in terms of rentals at the time. Like these were not, they haven't shown anything. Like they've obviously shown an ability to acquire catching and get it up to the majors, while it's still trending towards the top 100 performance in the minors. They haven't shown they can easily get this in a way. And people talking about like Shea Langoliers, like that's something that basically is going to cost like probably not the Crochet trade, but you're talking about like fixing the catching position from like your own Crochet trade from the other side and giving up that level of value. Like that's when you're talking about a deadline that honors the 2026 team, but also doesn't compromise you for the future. This would be an example of leaning towards present phase. So like, I don't see how, based on what they felt that this is, how they've talked about this guy throughout, that this is the sort of hurdle that makes you pivot in a big way. Is it concerning? Is it like this new thing that certainly needs to be managed, and like his off-season training needs to be all about like how finding out like what we can do to even help here or prevent this, as much as these all like a lot of them seem like freak injuries on an individual basis. Yes, that's like clearly the big project of the offseason for him. I have no doubt that everything we're going to be like talking to Kyle Teel about like next spring is going to be like, oh, what I did this offseason, to try to address this, or what I did to recover from this. So now I feel like I'm not compromised, or there's any risk of like something propping up again. Obviously, that's going to like rule the day. But as far as like what they put in to get here, what they've talked about it all up to this point, I don't think is like, you can't stay healthy. I think we're out on this one. I would almost say like, and just because like he's been on the field, I would argue like probably Caro's had like a worse year for his stock than Teal has. Like
Sure. Yeah, I
certainly
agree.
injuries as they pile up over time become their own issue. But like in terms of like the opening anecdote of the story I used, like his bats being way up. His framing scores were like weren't quite like this is a star, this is what he's doing, but like his shadow strike rate, like there was positive notes to it as far as like him realizing what they thought he was going to be to some degree. At least in terms of like, obviously he didn't get like surface level results really going in some big way, and as at bats like look someone's still kind of finding their timing. But I think he's more closer, or you're seeing more flashes of like, hey, this is what we want this to be, than even like Caro's swing just looking like he's just not on time for fastballs in the way that he even was last year, let alone what he was working to aspire to be yet. And you have to figure out why that is. And that's like kind of a bigger question of what you do, turn that around. So that's more of what I'm saying as far as like, they kind of have to still be in on Kyle Teel just from what they've already put in and how reasonable it is to really find like a high caliber replacement. All their language about it is like catching is gold. This is so valuable. It's because it's hard to acquire, and because like if you want to like now get a new franchise catcher at the deadline, as many of our readers are kind of like scoping out, like, hey, I don't know what your pitching ambitions were, but like turn them down 3 notches because you now have this. You're going to go shop in the expensive aisle for this extremely rare and hard to find commodity.
And I guess you could have done that in the draft with Vaughn Lackey if you drafted based on need. But when the White Sox had the draft, Kyle Teel was healthy. And the whole
The
like
idea that the college catcher you pick in July is going to be
right,
solving your immediate major league need for a playoff race, you could pick apart that ideal. That like if you find the one, everyone thinks you're a genius forever, but probably not a safe bet.
right. The whole preventing these injuries, though, to your point, James, they are freakish. Like maybe you can stretch a little bit more and take it easier in the spring so you don't pull a hamstring. But twisting your knee on a swing, this play at the plate, even though Erik made a good point that there are certain techniques that Kyle Teel could work on to prevent hurting himself when he has these types of situations and staying on his toes and not twisting and contorting his body when he's on his knees. There's some things that Kyle Teel could work on, but it is 3 separate lower half injuries, and I'm not exactly sure on how he could prevent these moving forward. I guess my concern, James, is we've been through this rodeo before. Luis Robert, Yoan Moncada, Eloy Jimenez. Like this is my concern right now. Is I'm really hoping for Kyle Teel's sake, he doesn't have all this bad injury luck. Like very recent heralded White Sox prospects went through.
It takes a toll. Like if you keep getting this, like if your legs keep taking trauma, like there's a residue of that. There's a longer term compromise to what's happening structurally. If you keep it, like you don't want this to keep happening, not just from like a single like, oh, he's out for this long and then we get him back, he's 100%, but like if you keep having these like issues compile, like it becomes harder and harder to maintain. um yeah, that's definitely a concern. I think that's true with any player, and obviously being burned and like really like seeing like the last years of like Eloy Jimenez with the White Sox, where it was like so much of just him having to like just like seeing him like trying to get into a rhythm offensively, trying to like get into his legs with his swing so he could lift the ball, and it like being this painstaking process to get him upright. And right when he like kind of gets going again, something else crops up and he gets taken down to zero, and like seeing how the frustration mounted for him, like that's definitely like something that I can understand being in everyone's minds when you see somebody like go through repeated stuff over the course of the year. I know it's certainly on mine. I just don't think like what like taking them all in a vacuum, it's like doing high level international competition in March in an early part of your ramp up, and then it's hooking your cleat on and he switches to plastic cleats after, and then it's like maybe as referencing the conversation you have with Erik Kratz, like, is it a technique thing that he fixes? And then, like, theoretically, you could look at all of them like, hey, there's something we've done that can make these go away in the future, or less likely in the future, that you hope latches on. But yeah, it's certainly worrisome. It's certainly something, like, for somebody whose career is so built around, his legs being strong, being indomitable, being durable, like, it's a concern. I just don't think it's quite, like, one, past the point of, like, no return, or like this is just happening and for reasons that wouldn't happen to anyone else, or that this is, like, kind of brings this guy back down to, like, not an exceptional prospect, or not like a pretty good, like, franchise level catcher to project to work into. As I was citing in the piece, like, Adley Rutschman, Hunter Goodman, Shea Langoliers, none of them were as good in the majors at age 23 as Kyle Teel was. Like, this guy's been pretty precocious, and he's still pretty early on in his career for a position that has a lot of weird, it's famous for twists and turns developmentally. You don't want it to be a year where it's just getting hurt in a way that, like, compounds it in some way, but it's certainly not, oh man, like, project has just taken all on so much water, let's abandon. Like, for
Yeah.
most parts, he's still kind of ahead of the game as far as, like, catching prospects go, or young catchers who establish themselves. Like, it can take a while. It takes weird turns. It can also take a weird turn where he's not catching anymore, and, like, he's, Wilson Contreras in the back half of his career, where it's just, like, kind of a bat, and people don't even remember him catching half the time. I don't know, like, it can be weird. But I just don't think it's like, this is the end sort of thing for a 24-year-old catcher who's, hit really well in the majors for long stretches, and definitely annihilated AAA offensively whenever he's been exposed to it.
Yeah, I'm with you, James. I don't think this is going to be the end of Kyle Teel's tenure as catcher. I'm just wanting to punch the nearest wooden object, Jim, to make sure he doesn't follow in line of Luis Robert, Yoan Moncada, and Eloy Jimenez. It's just been a bad
Speaking of
look.
common preventable baseball injuries.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Just no kidding. All right. So, Jim, I asked Erik Kratz this question. With Kyle Teel's injury, should the White Sox make a trade for a catcher?
Yes. You had me, try to come up with three names, and now that we're on the Foul Territory Network, I was going to say AJ Przinsky, just to see if he would arrive like the Candyman. Yeah, I think there are enough options available on the trade market, be they super solutions, be they rentals, be they just kind of guys with a strength, to where they should find somebody, because Caro and Roma, they got by with them well enough the first time, but I think it serves as a cautionary tale of just can you try you know pressing your luck again and seeing if you can get the exact same results as a team with the exact same results from the catching tandem. It seems unlikely, kind of like we saw the White Sox running out of gas a little bit with Murakami out and finishing slightly below 500. It does feel like they would be just trying to win a very narrow bet once again with the catchers they have on hand.
Todd Father, are you hitting some games this summer? What's the deal?
Oh, of course, and it's real simple. Scotty Braun, you know how it is. You go to SeatGeek and you can find any deal you want in any section you want. Even if the game's sold out, go to SeatGeek and you'll find something that you love, affordable for your family, that you can enjoy anywhere, anytime, at any ballpark and stadium you want. Enjoy it. It's the best opportunity to go see a beautiful game of baseball.
And that's the thing. You can be so last minute. SeatGeek is the official ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. They have you covered for all of your baseball ticket needs the entire summer. They also have over 70,000 events on SeatGeek. That includes concerts, festivals, all kinds of sporting events. So go check it out right now, FT fam. The code is Territory10 for 10% off your next set of MLB tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off with promo code Territory10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app, and then the code automatically is added to your account so you can use it later.
Let's take a look at some options for the White Sox then before the deadline, Jim. And let's start with Erik's recommendation as far as Jonah Heim. And Jonah Heim this season, for the podcast listeners, offensively not terrible for catchers. He's got 9 homers, 31 RBIs. His weighted runs created plus is 91. He's slugging 429. He's already played for 2 teams this season. Heat check on Jonah Heim, Jim. Would that be a good target for the White Sox?
Yeah, I think he's probably the one who checks off the most boxes in terms of shouldn't cost a ton. I mean, the A's got him for cash from the Braves. I don't think the White Sox could get him for cash, given that he's playing a whole lot better now. But he's been, I guess, through the transaction cycle a few times after peaking with the Rangers, and seems like he's picked himself up pretty well and timed this really well to have a market for a contender. But there's the possibility of it bottoming out again. Like, he's not somebody who has a strength in any reliable regard. Like, he's an okay framer, kind of okay in terms of defensively. Switch hitter, sometimes it doesn't matter because he isn't effective from either side. But in this current form, he hits lefties pretty well, which is a skill that this White Sox lineup can use. So I think, based on where the A's are and that Heim is a free agent after the season, they're looking to get something for him. The White Sox aren't looking to commit beyond the year, assuming that they're still into what Kyle Teel is offering. So on those grounds, a matchup works pretty well. It's just the case where, the other teams could be saying the same thing. They're looking to shore up their catchers. And so that could make the market a little bit more heated than maybe Heim's previous transaction costs would lead you to believe.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jim. So you recommended 2. Let's start with the defensive specialist over in San Diego, Freddy Fermin. And offensively, he's right there with Drew Romo and Edgar Caro with the 52 weighted runs created plus. He's batting 159. His OBP and slugging are below 300. You wouldn't trade for him, Jim, because of offense. I'm thinking you are making the suggestion because he would greatly help defensively behind home plate.
Yeah, this is the Cleveland Guardians plan of rolling with Austin Hedges, although, we talked about Hedges before and how he just started hitting. But Hedges and then doubling down on that with Patrick Bailey, just going for defense and know-how behind the plate. Fermin is a above average framer, and he's got a great arm, like great at killing the running game. Was a valuable backup for the Royals. The Padres acquired him last year in a trade and plugged him in, and he helped the Padres get to the postseason. He played pretty well in the postseason. So they rolled into this year with him as the most time starter. We're seeing Luis Campusano come in and earn some playing time. He's a younger option, definitely offers more at the plate. Fermin has had a couple of head-related issues, which I guess would be the flag here when it comes to acquiring him, is he had a concussion and then he had a head contusion. So he's been on the injured list a couple times over the last month or so with foul ball issues. And so with the catcher, you can't downplay that and say like, oh, it's just bad luck. That's the kind of thing that can accumulate. So you have to be very careful about that, do due diligence. But if the Padres are looking to reshape the roster, Fermin is 31, not hitting, not somebody you plan around necessarily, a catcher like that into his early 30s. And the Padres might have enough options behind the plate as they reshape the roster, looking at the rest of the season and into next season, to where they're fine letting Fermin go. And last year, the Padres got him for a couple of up and down arms, Stephen Kolek and Ryan Burgett, and they're continue to be up and down. We've seen Kolek, the White Sox hit him pretty well, although Kolek also has a shutout this year, but now he's on the injured list for the rest of the year. But the White Sox have those up and down arms. If the transaction cost is anything similar, Fermin is making more than he was making last year because he's ARB eligible, but not so much. Like, he's making $2 million. Not really a cost. I think that alters trade calculus too much. But if that's what it cost last year to acquire him, and he's, again, not really hitting and more of a defensive specialist with some injury concerns maybe, then that might be a guy whose price is more acceptable.
And then finally, the most popular recommendation on social media in the comments section at Sox Machine, and that is Tyler Stephenson. Stephenson right now, weighted runs created plus 92. He's slugging 391, respectable batting average at 244, and he's getting on base at a 321 clip. He has 8 home runs and 27 RBIs this year, and his WAR is 0.82. point. 3, would this be your top target, Jim, for the White Sox before the deadline if they want to help out the catching situation?
I would say a top target. I think, Fermin, if he's healthy, I think offers a strength the White Sox could use. So I think I'd be right there with him, kind of going back and forth. Stephenson is kind of the polar opposite in that he's very watchable at the plate. I think the most reliable hitter of the three we're discussing. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, so he's a rental and not like a rental on the scale of Ryan Jeffers. I don't know if the Twins are looking to trade Ryan Jeffers because they're in the race as much as anybody, I think, in that wild card race below 500. And, he provides a very valuable bet for a catcher. But if they wanted to see what they could get and roll with Victor Caratini as their primary catcher, they could maybe justify doing that. And I think the price would probably be too high for the White Sox, kind of that super solution. But I think Stephenson as rental offers the most reliable bats, watchable at the plate in a way that White Sox catchers haven't been watchable. But the defense is pretty bad. Like in terms of where Statcast has him, he's towards the bottom in terms of run value as a catcher. So you are trading off work behind the plate for what he does at it. And based on what the White Sox have seen and who they can balance him with, that might be something worth considering still. But I think you kind of have him and Fermin representing the ends of the spectrum in terms of, do you want offense? Do you want a bat that you don't mind coming to the plate with a runner on second and third and, the game on the line? Or would you rather have that kind of veteran catching presence the White Sox haven't had for a couple of years that can really nail down the position? They had Reese McGuire for a little bit. I guess that would be the most comparable example. But for most of the time over the last couple of years, it's been really young catchers. So if you want that veteran catch and throw guy behind the plate, Fermin would check those boxes.
I guess we can go around the horn. Are we expecting the White Sox before the deadline to trade for a catcher? Yes or no? James, I'll start with you.
I would expect them to acquire a catcher in some fashion.
Okay.
If it's like some sort of waiver claim, free agency, like stopgap backup level dude, and it's not a trade, but like someone else enters the mix in some way, like I want to claim that too. But in citing that, I want to like kind of state my expectations for it to be more on the mild side, rather than like multiple years of control, new 1A like option necessarily. That would like surprise me, if only because like those are bigger trades and thus they're less likely to happen, and thus you always are smarter by saying it's unlikely than saying it's gonna happen. And so I like to be smart and be extremely risk averse about my reputation.
So the target clearance aisle, which I guess all three of these catchers that we talked about could be that, but I can understand your point that the White Sox may want to hunt on the waiver wire rather than give up any prospects to acquire a catcher via trade. James is saying yes. Jim, yes or no? White Sox add a catcher before the deadline?
Yes. Kind of along the same lines of they could just try to pry somebody who's doing well in AAA. I couldn't really identify that kind of candidate. Who I looked up like the teams that are rich in catching, and then I looked at their AAA rosters to see if there's like a Corey Lee isn't quite doing it this year, but just somebody who is killing it in AAA and just is not a part of the plans and is maybe on the veteran side or has maybe been a third catcher for teams in the past, and the White Sox might be able to get him for cash consideration, something like that. Didn't really see anybody fitting that description of just like currently killing it. I think like the closest is Chucky Robinson with the Dodgers, and the White Sox have had him before. Chucky. And he's been up and down for the past couple of years of the Dodgers. And I mean, Dodgers are not a bad team to look at in terms of is this guy useful for this kind of just, we need a catcher. We need somebody behind the plate to have some idea what he's doing when there's an emergency. And I think he fits that bill well enough. So like that level, I think, of acquisition might be possible if they look at the trades and say like, well, we want to direct the resources to a starter, and what they're asking for catching is demanding the same players that we want to direct elsewhere. And that might be where they look for the clearance aisle, the the rack outside the store saying, make me an offer, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I do think that the White Sox, I'm going to say they're going to go the trade route. I really do like the idea of Jonah Heim. I'm fine with any of the options that you also presented, Jim. We'll see what the White Sox do, but maybe they do get some good news, and maybe the White Sox front office believes Kyle Teel could return within 5 to 8 weeks rather than the 6 to 12 week window. Really depends on how his rehab goes, but after watching this series against the Texas Rangers, I don't know if I really trust Edgar Caro and Drew Romo 5 more weeks to help the White Sox offensively and defensively stay ahead of the Cleveland Guardians. But let us know in the comments section, either on YouTube or on SoxMachine.com, what direction you want the White Sox to go with this particular situation. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening, and a huge shout out to Erik Kratz for joining us at the beginning part of the show. Again, remember to watch Foul Territory daily from 12 to 2 p.m. Central Time on youtube.com/Foul Territory. You can subscribe to the Sox Machine podcast if you want to listen to the audio version, wherever you listen to podcasts such as Spotify and Apple Music. You could watch the show. We are now a video podcast at our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the social media platforms at Sox Machine. Follow James Fegan at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you'd like to help support us, not only can you subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also subscribe to us at SoxMachine.com. Our $5 a month plan, which is our introduction plan, is now just 53 cents as the Chicago White Sox continue to win. So take advantage of that sale. So the first month of a Sox Machine subscription is just 53 cents. After that, $5 a month, that gets you the ad-free version of the website, unlocks the comments section as well for you. We have additional tiers of support, including our Veterans Committee, in which our VC members are going to enjoy Sweet Night coming up here in August for the White Sox and Guardians series. And they're also in the group chat as well. So they're going to be pestering us with questions soon, all about the trade deadline and what we are hearing. So if you want the gossip, whispers, gossipers from Sox Machine, you can join SoxMachine.com and inquire of joining the Veterans Committee. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Foul Territory Network. Alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.